Hey guys, so today I have something that's a little bit different for my channel. I've never done a storytime video before, and although it is something I'm looking to get into on this channel, this will be the first. And it's not a story I was expecting to be the first, because it's one that recently developed. Whenever I thought about putting story times on my channel, I always thought back to things that happened in high school or earlier in college, and I didn't really have any stories from my current year, my senior year. But recently something happened, and I realized that it was something that I thought the internet would possibly enjoy. Plus, I know that a lot of people from my school that I know are watching these videos, like, hi, if you're in my sorority. And so I figured some of those people might enjoy hearing this story as well because it pertains to our university. So I'm not sure what I'm going to title this video yet, but I'm sure it makes it sound like I go to the worst university ever, which we all kind of feel like that here sometimes. Although it's a largely liberal university, we have our problems, and this is one of them. So I guess to start off, I was visiting my friend Bailey, at her dorm. And so I live off campus at this point. This is an off-campus apartment I live in, and I've not lived in the dorms in the last 2 years. But I go to the dorms to visit. And so I was visiting my little Bailey, and I was in her dorm, and the essays, which we call RAs essays at my school. It stands for student advisor. But the essays make boards, bulletin boards. And so on their section of the floor that they are the essay of, they make a bulletin board, and it's there for people to, for them to like provide information and like study skills and fun facts and like what's going on campus and just like whatever they want to put on their bulletin board. There are quite a few liberal boards at our university. There's a lot of them that are like, hey, this is how to properly ask somebody what their pronouns are. And, ones that really are geared towards acceptance and respecting people's identities. So I guess probably because a large part of our essays are liberal, this conservative essay made a board. So the board was entitled A Different Perspective Representing Conservative Views on Campus. A couple words there might be off, but that's more or less verbatim. And so I saw this board and I was like, wow, that's probably not going to be great, and it's probably going to piss me off a lot, and so I decided to read it anyway. So I started reading this board. The first section I read was about gun rights. And for the most part, it wasn't that bad. There was one part that admitted that there was a student who was in the process of acquiring an automatic weapon, which I feel like the university should be very concerned about considering how many school shootings there's been lately, but that was on the board. Then I read a section about free speech, and there was also a section that, I don't even remember what it was entitled, but somebody, because the idea was that these opinions weren't all the essays. He had gone to different people and who were conservative and asked them for their opinions on these topics, and so he posted what they wrote him at that, like, was their opinion. They wrote up their thoughts, and he, copy and pasted, formatted, put it on the board. So not everything was his opinions. All was from these people who lived across campus, apparently, and like in different dorms. It wasn't just like residents of this dorm. But there was one section where a student, they began by saying that sex and gender are the same thing. They said, look it up in the dictionary. They're the same exact thing. They're synonyms. Not true. Like, blatantly not true. And then said transgender people are not real, that you are the gender that you were assigned at birth, and you are not any other gender. And that was the final straw for me. The free speech stuff got pretty bad because a lot of it was defending the idea that hate speech is protected under free speech, but it was the comments about transgender people that pissed me off a lot. And so I got a pen out of my backpack. And I'm not recommending this, by the way. don't whip a pen out of your backpack and do this, but I, as I like to say it, annotated the board. So next to the free speech title, under which people were defending their right to spew hate speech as free speech, I wrote, "Free speech is not hate speech," in all caps, and that is the one picture of my vandalism that I do have. And yeah, it was vandalism. I did vandalize a bulletin board. Yes, I wrote on paper, so it was very, very little property damage, but this is vandalism. And I proceeded then to annotate the rest of the board. I told the girl who wrote that she only believed in first wave feminism and that every woman who still believes that she is in some way oppressed is wrong, that she's brainwashed. I told the boy who was attempting to get an automatic weapon that that terrifies me and that shouldn't be allowed. I annotated a lot. I overstayed my welcome. I overstayed what was safe in order to not get caught. And little to my knowledge, the essay who had made the board, his dorm room was located directly across the hall from the board. So I heard a door open. I stood up, still had my pen in hand, and I went to leave, and he straight up caught me. He saw me. There was no way I was going to get away fast enough that he wouldn't see me. Like, I wasn't going to run and have him chase me through the building. Like, I was going to fess up to what I'd done. So he asked me, "What were you doing?" And I said I left some notes on the board, and we gathered around it. He read my notes, and he decided that we were going to have a chat. So far, the situation seemed like, might not turn out for the worst. So we sat in some armchairs that were located in a little corner of the dorm floor. And I admitted I made a rash decision. I should have reported the board to higher-ups, gone to administration, gone to our chair for discrimination, any of those things. There was plenty of options that I should have taken, which I did not. I probably took the worst option, but it was the one that made me happy in the moment. And that's what I was doing. And so I admitted that, and I was like, made a spur of this moment decision, but I do want to tell you that your board is wrong. And he did not really seem to conceptualize why his board shouldn't be allowed. And I said, I'm fine with you making a conservative board and giving voice to conservative people. I'm not fine with you inserting hate speech into someone's home. I'm like, anybody in this building who is transgender has now been targeted. That is hate speech because it is telling them that their identity is completely invalid and that they do not exist as the gender that they are. And I said, I don't think it should be allowed. We went back and forth a number of times. He pointed out to me that the email addresses of the people who had contributed the opinions were on the board. So basically you could have a discussion with them about their opinions. And at the time, I couldn't really put voice to these thoughts. But in retrospect, I've realized that the reason I had no interest in contacting the people who were on the board was not because I wanted to change their opinions. These people were obviously very into their conservative views. They weren't the kind of people I was going to be able to change the opinions of or have a good conversation with if they agreed to contribute to this board and wrote these things. But what bothered me more than anything was that somebody who is transgender would walk past that board possibly every day if they live on that floor, and have their identity erased. And that is what infuriated me, because emailing the people who had contributed to the board doesn't change the fact that that hate speech is within their home. And so I wanted to annotate it and I wanted to vandalize it because I wanted there to be a message there that let those transgender people know that everybody didn't agree with what that man had written. Because it mattered to me a lot more that a transgender person who saw that board knew that they were supported, despite the fact that somebody allowed hate speech against their identity to sit in their home. People live in dorms, and that is what infuriated me. And so I told him that, and he said that he agreed that that was wrong. And so I said, well, why did you put it on the board then if you agree that it is blatantly scientifically wrong to say that sex and gender are the same thing and that they're synonyms and that transgender people don't exist? And he said, well, free speech. And he used free speech as a cop-out to not be cognizant of the opinions that he is showing support as somebody in a position of power. If you were an SA, you are somebody who is in a position of power within the dorm. You have power to report your residents, to, get them in trouble for noise complaints, for alcohol, for all of these various things. And so being a position of power in the dorm, even if he says those aren't my opinions, he still didn't think that they were wrong enough to not put them on the board. And no matter how much he wants to use free speech as a cop-out, that's still showing his authoritative support of that opinion, because he, as somebody in authority, to have said no to that going on the board, let it be on the board. And that pisses me off too. And so I tried to stay calm throughout this conversation, but I was letting him know that what he had done wasn't okay. I did apologize. However, he did try and guilt trip me into helping him repair the board. He said multiple times, I'm going to have to redo it. I'm going to have to redo it. And I wasn't having that shit. I was not going to help him remake a board, and I was not going to be the one in charge of putting hate speech back on a board and back into the homes of LGBTQ people. That was not going to happen. And so every single time that he said, I'm going to have to redo it, I was just like, sorry. But I was not going to be guilt tripped by him into helping him redo this fucking board. So I think because I did not volunteer to assist him in redoing the board, was why he ultimately reported me to people with more authority. And so he did call the person who's essentially the manager of the essays and deals with, larger situations. And they took my information. They asked for my ID. They took my information. They told me, you will be receiving an email, that tells you that you will have to have a student conduct board hearing to determine a punishment for your actions. And that I probably would not be, given a very harsh punishment because I had been very, that I'd gone along, I can't remember the word, but I'd gone along with everything. I hadn't tried to run. I'd been respectful and had this discussion and hadn't, screamed at him or anything. I just, we'd had a chat. So they took my information and we all went on our merry way. The higher up staff member that came and reported it, I definitely got the impression that this was the last thing that he wanted to be doing. He did not believe that he should have to be punishing me for speaking out against hate speech, was the vibe I got. He did not blatantly say any of that, but that was the vibe I got. I very much got the vibe that he did not want to have to be punishing me for this. And so, we all went on our merry way. I informed the people that I wanted to about what had occurred. I reached out to my sorority president to make sure this wasn't going to come back on my sorority. And if it does, that's going to suck. I told some people about it. And since then, a lot of people have sent some strongly worded emails. Because lots and lots and lots of people who are supportive and accepting individuals also don't believe that hate speech should be in a dorm where people live. And since that night, which occurred 2 weeks ago now, I have found out that somebody who is transgender lives on that floor in that section of the dorm. And so my worst fear in regards to that board and in regards to the hate speech that was on that board came true. There is somebody who has to walk past hate speech against their identity every single time they go home. And that infuriates me. I actually visited my friend again recently, and I saw that somebody else had taken a writing utensil to the board. It has now been vandalized again in silver Sharpie. And an email actually was sent to, I believe it was every organization that had members reach out. So like a lot of our diversity organizations, as well as everybody who lives in the dorms on campus. And it didn't mention the bulletin board, but it definitely seems related because it was an email inviting them all to talk about diversity within dorm life. And it was an event that occurred last night, I believe, and I have not yet heard what happened there. My takeaway is that there wasn't good attendance, it seems, because nobody that I know that sent an email with their concerns has went to it. But also, it has been 2 weeks since my specific incident, and I have not received an email about my student conduct board hearing. And so I don't know what that means at this point. I don't know if that means that they went into the system and saw as a graduating senior and said, oh, she's leaving campus anyway, she'll be out of our hair soon. I don't know if that means that the higher up staff members swept it under the rug. I don't know if that means that the student conduct board decided that I didn't even need to come in and that they weren't going to do anything. I have no idea. I don't know if that means the paperwork is behind and it hasn't even been filed yet. I have no idea. 2 weeks, however, seems like a long time to have been waiting to hear about, what happens next. So something tells me nothing's going to happen next. However, I am still upset that that board was allowed at all, because the essay did tell me that the board was approved by multiple people who are much higher in our resident life department than him. The head of Res Life, the hall director of that dorm, they all approved it, he said. Granted, since talking to him, I have also found out several times that he may have lied to me. So those things that he said that it was approved, that they did support it, might have been lies. One of the ways he lied to me was that he told me that he identified as moderate with his political views and that he did not hold as conservative views as the board led me to believe. However, he dated a girl that I have mutual friends with, and they informed me that by no means is he moderate. He is very deeply conservative, and that he probably does believe the things that are on his board. And so that really bothers me, that he tried to find some sort of middle ground to make me like him so I would help him, like redo the board or something. I'm very upset that he lied to me, because you're a person in a position of responsibility and you're just gonna lie to people. I don't know, it just seems so wrong to me. And then on top of that, he also told me that he was like, well, I was going to do a liberal board, but I guess that's not going to happen now if it's going to be so controversial to have political views on boards and stuff. However, there was a sign on the board that said, this, as my last board as an essay, I wanted to do something about conservative views or something along those lines. But it definitely said, as my last board as an essay. And so he wasn't going to do a liberal board. He lied to me about that because he didn't have another bulletin board. And since then, I've also asked people who were a part of the dorm staff. I was like, is this the last bulletin board essays have to do this year? And they're like, yeah, he doesn't have another board. So he blatantly lied to me about that as well. And that bothers me so much as well, because if you're going to sit down and pretend that we're going to have an honest conversation about politics and this bulletin board and why I'm not okay with it, and I'm going to be honest with you and say I should not have vandalized it, but I don't believe in it and I know that there was better routes to take, and just be a genuine human being, then how do you sit down and say, let's have a chat about this, let's have a good talk about this, and also call it a good talk when you walk away at the end? Because he did that and he was like, I'm really glad that we were so civil about this, but lie to me in the course of that conversation, and that's not okay either. So in the end, I am glad that I'm not appearing to be in big trouble for this. I'm glad that my college career is not going to be affected by the fact that I made a rash decision. If the staff member did sweep it under the rug and not end up reporting me, I'm I am thankful that he decided to do that, because I'm happy that I'm not going to get in trouble. I am not going to graduate or something because of this. I'm not going to be in trouble with administration because of this. You know, I'm still upset that the bulletin board was approved in the first place. I am still upset that it has taken this many complaints to have any kind of action taken against holding such conservative views in the dorms. Because if you're a conservative person who at least exercises tolerance, like, you can exist. If you show that much intolerance, I don't know why you would want to be an essay, because you're obviously not going to be in support of many of your own residents, and you're not in support of people at large. So I don't know why you'd become an essay. And I don't know why, when you know that you live on a largely liberal campus, you would let such heavily conservative views be put onto a bulletin board. And especially knowing that somebody transgender lives in that space, you would allow hate speech against them to be put on the board. Using free speech as a cop-out for hate speech being okay is not okay. And if you are in a position of authority, especially to people who are realizing their identities and entering a new stage of life, I don't think that you should be allowed to insert your opinions that much, because there is a large difference to me between an essay putting up a board that says, here's how to be respectful to your peers that are people of color and LGBTQ people and other marginalized groups, versus somebody who's conservative putting their views out there of, here are ways to be a bigot. And I think that's where I'm going to leave this story time. I think that's good. So, I guess I'd like to have a discussion about this. If anybody who watches this does want to, feel free to leave comments and discuss this more, your views on whether the bulletin board should be okay or not, I guess. I will say that if you believe the things that were on the board, like, wholeheartedly with your whole heart, you are conservative, please X out of this video and don't leave a comment. But if you want to have, like, a discussion about, like, the intricacies of people expressing their political opinions in different ways, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to hear some more story times, if you want me to be a little more political on here, I can definitely do that. I have very strong opinions about things. I'm just going to leave that there as well. But yeah, if you want to see me talk a little bit more about political issues, LGBTQ issues especially, I can. If you enjoy this, please hit like and subscribe if you want to see more content from me, because I do plan on having some more story times, and my other content consists of Sims speed builds and a lot of thrifting videos, so check those out if you're interested. But thank you for watching. Bye.